Those three undergraduates in the front row in the far corner want their picture taken with you.
Okay, I can do that.
And they've been at me for about a week. Got it, okay. Scott, ready to go? Well, we could just enjoy the silence for a moment. I am Peter Robinson, the Murdoch Fellow here at the Hoover Institution. Welcome to the second of three panel discussions in honor of the late Secretary of State and longtime fellow here at the Hoover Institution, George Shultz. The first panel concerned Mr. Shultz as a champion of human rights. The third and final panel will discuss his contributions to foreign policy. This panel is George Shultz as an economist. With us, Mike Boskin, who has been a Hoover Fellow for about a quarter of a century, whose public service includes chairing the council of the President's Council of Economic Advisors in the administration of President George H.W. Bush, and whose private work involves many board memberships, including longtime board membership at Oracle. Condoleezza Rice. I'll go ahead with the introduction just to be, I think everybody knows who Condi Rice is. Public service includes National Security Advisor and Secretary of State in the administration of President George W. Bush. Private service includes Provost of Stanford University and Director of the Hoover Institution, which brings us to the man who wins the award for the most distance traveled to join us here this evening. Jerome Powell earned his undergraduate degree from Princeton and his law degree from Georgetown. I should mention that at Princeton, he was a member of the same eating club as George Shultz and first became aware of the presence and career of George Shultz by having lunch under George Shultz's picture, correct?
Something like that.
Something like that. All right. Jerome Powell's government service includes service at the Treasury Department during the presidency of George H.W. Bush, his work in the private sector as a partner at the Carlyle Group. Since 2018, Jay Powell has served as chairman of the Federal Reserve Board of Governors. Chairman Powell will begin this evening with some brief opening remarks. Jay?
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Condi. Thank you, Michael. And thanks everyone for being here. I'm deeply honored to have been asked to speak here today about the remarkable legacy of George Shultz. And just to be clear right at the start, I will not address current economic conditions or monetary policy. So I've been an admirer of George Shultz since my college years. I saw him then and now as a great role model. As I mentioned just a few months ago when delivering the baccalaureate address to Princeton's class of 2025, 50 years after my own graduation. As I told the graduates, when I faced the world after college, I had no real plan, but I knew that I wanted to combine a private sector career with public service. And I had in mind a few well-known public figures of the era, especially George Shultz, who by then had left to go to Bechtel, whose picture, as I recall, was on the wall of the Princeton Eating Club, of which both of us were members, the Quadrangle Club. George may also have caught my attention because my dad was a labor lawyer who represented one of the major steel companies in collective bargaining. Like George, my father had both a belief in the collective bargaining process and a deep respect for workers. So I followed George's career with interest through the years. It didn't occur to me that I would ever have the honor of meeting him, but I did meet him after I joined the Fed in 2012 as I visited Stanford from time to time. And I remember energetic economic discussions at group lunches in the conference room at Hoover. George was also kind enough to host John Taylor, Michael, and me for a chilly round of golf on a rainy March day. So today, our focus is on George Shultz's extraordinarily broad economic accomplishments. But I also want to celebrate the remarkable man and policymaker that he was, and several things stand out for me. He was a man who combined strong principles and unshakable integrity with common sense and practical problem-solving approach to policy. He had a deep belief in the wisdom of markets and a desire to let them work whenever possible without government direction. And that theme runs through many of the issues that we'll discuss today, including collective bargaining, wage and price controls, and exchange rates. But he was not an absolutist, and he saw that there are sometimes market failures that do require being addressed by public policy. As one of the most successful policymakers of his era, George brought the intellectual rigor of an academic to the practical, constrained, messy work of policymaking. Through 4 cabinet appointments, he dealt with many of the great issues of his day with remarkable success. And he kept at it long after leaving public office, making important contributions here at Hoover on healthcare reform, climate change, nuclear disarmament, and other areas. He may be less well known for this, but George Shultz was deeply concerned about racial discrimination in the workplace and in our society more broadly. He consistently and effectively used his positions of authority to increase opportunities for minorities. And he later noted that there was both a moral and an economic case for this. He stuck to his principles while also treating people with honesty and respect, including those with whom he had policy disagreements. Labor leaders welcomed his appointment as Secretary of Labor, and as many of his contemporaries remarked, faced with divergent views and difficult issues, he was extraordinarily good at steering people toward agreement. A key part of that strategy was to let the parties reach the final agreement themselves. That way, they owned the agreement and were more likely to honor it. His friendships and collaborations were beyond
it's the best job in government. And I said, well, George, you should know because you've held almost every other job in government. But the reason that he said that is perhaps part of the answer to your question, Peter. He said that he always fundamentally believed that the United States had the right foundational principles, and that was much of the reason for our success. One of those foundational principles was, of course, the free market. And of course, the Chicago School, spread particularly in Latin America and other places, had, he thought, the chance to bring other countries out of poverty, to use their resources best and to gain prosperity. But he also believed in the inextricable link between free markets and individual liberty. And that reflected in the way that he took on the challenge, of course, being the Secretary of State as the Soviet Union was beginning to go into its twilight. We forget that George's first years as secretary, the Soviet Union was a bit on the march. It's 1982, 83, 84. The sense that the Soviet Union was really the future. And from George's point of view, this was nonsense. And this is something that he shared, of course, with Ronald Reagan, that this experiment, as Reagan had called it, this experiment that was practiced on a hapless people would end up on the ash heap of history. Now, George, who was a great diplomat, would never have said it so boldly as Reagan did. But because they believed in the fundamental principles of the free market and individual liberty, the Soviet Union was on the wrong side of history. And they were together perfectly willing to say that, perfectly willing to challenge the system. There's a story that Mike likes to tell of George meeting with Gorbachev and saying to Gorbachev, you know, that central planning thing that you've got going, maybe you'd better take off with planning because you all aren't doing it very well. And can you imagine Gorbachev at that point thinking, who is this guy and why is he telling me about my own economy? But because he had been a great economist, because he'd been Secretary of the Treasury, I think George was able to bring this knowledge of how the free market worked, along with his belief in the free market and his belief in individual liberty to really challenge many of the assumptions about the strength of the Soviet Union at that particular point in time, and then to be there, of course, for the beginning of the end.
Mike, a question for you on the longshoreman strike. Let me set it up. The Nixon years, just after George becomes Secretary of Labor under President Nixon in January '69, he finds himself confronted with the longshoreman strike. He's under intense pressure for the government to intervene, but he insists on keeping the federal government out of it, forcing the longshoremen and management to the bargaining table on their own. Instead of damaging the entire economy, the strike settles just a month after George Shultz takes office. Why was that such an important episode?
First of all, it set a really important example. Number one, that government intervention sometimes can be an obstacle rather than a provider of successful outcomes. Number two, it's really important because it signaled that people could make their own decisions and would be forced to if they were confronting each other rather than wait around for the government to come in. They wouldn't make their best offers, they wouldn't get serious. This became very clear to me. I was a beneficiary of George's advice and friendship, and we did a lot of things together over the years. Maybe talk about that a bit later, but it becomes really apparent when you're dealing with a whole different context and people that aren't used to thinking about markets, people that aren't used to thinking about individual incentives, people being able to think that way. And that goes back to your and Jay's comments and Condi's about as being an economist. He was used to this idea that people were trying to do the best they can themselves given their environment, and that if you let them do that, that would collectively lead to the best possible outcome. Kind of a basic theorem of basic economics, which some people forget. And there's always a pressure for the government to do something. If, you know, all of us have been, Jay still is, but we've been in public office. And the first thing every morning in the briefing room is what's the president going to do about X? And it could be anything. It could be anything the president shouldn't have any worry about, shouldn't even know about. But so it's important to set that example and to let things play out until there really is something that you desperately need the government to intervene for if that happens.
Two incidents in the Nixon years that are less, strictly speaking, economic than social. The Philadelphia Plan. In the spring of 1969, George Shultz issues the Philadelphia Plan, which requires federal contractors to hire minority workers. And he famously makes the remark that he's not imposing quotas, he's ending a quota, and the quota that he was ending was on Black workers, and it was zero. As Secretary of Labor, he also ran the White House Cabinet Committee on Education, which was charged with developing a strategy for the peaceful integration of schools in the 7 states of the Deep South. He ended up running it because Vice President Spiro Agnew wanted nothing to do with it. He was given the chairmanship and never turned up for any meetings. There's a famous moment, I heard Mr. Shultz himself tell this story. George Shultz has the chairs of the Mississippi Committee come in. It's a white man and a black man, and he has them sit down together in the White House. And as they get close to an agreement, Secretary of State leaves the room. And I'm quoting George Shultz here. I learned long ago, you mentioned this in your remarks, Jay. I learned long ago that when parties get this close to an agreement, it's best to let them complete their deal on their own. That way the agreement belongs to them, close quote. By the end of the Nixon administration, this is a statistic I found staggering, I wasn't aware of it, more than 90% of Black children in the South were attending integrated schools. All right, he's a labor economist, but in the Philadelphia Plan and in the integration of schools in the South, he's solving social problems. What's going on here? This has something to do with his own principles, with the respect in which everyone holds him. Jay, would you like to address these episodes?
I would. So this is something that people need to know more about. George Shultz is an extraordinary accomplishment, and it is consistent through his career. He started the first minority program to bring kids into the University of Chicago Business School and many other things along the way. But in this case, Brown v. Board is decided in 1954. This is 15 years later, and there's 7 southern states that have just not desegregated their schools. Supreme Court makes it clear that the argument is over and we're going to do this. George Shultz he takes over this commission, and he picks a black person and a white person from each of the 7 states. He gets them together, and they figure out how to do this because they now know this is going to happen, and he gets them to realize that. And the whole idea is this has got to be done without violence, and he manages to get that done. It's an extraordinary accomplishment. How did he do it? This is the sort of the full Shultz playbook of bringing people together, treating them with respect, empowering them, enabling them to take on this terrible, difficult issue. And it really worked. I mean, the schools did open without violence in these 7 southern states, and it's quite a remarkable story. And he really made it happen. So quite extraordinary.
Well, actually, I lived it.
Yeah.
Because I was a kid in elementary school in Birmingham, Alabama, in the early 1960s. And Brown versus Board of Education 54, essentially nothing happens in integration of the schools, despite the striking down of separate but equal.
They just ignored it.
They just ignored it, just ignored it. And then finally, after the Supreme Court, so they came up with this plan called, just before George's intervention, called choice. Now, choice is a good thing these days. In those days, it wasn't a particularly good choice because good idea, because the idea was probably white parents would choose to keep their kids in white schools, and black parents would choose to send their kids to white schools. As it turns out, nobody chose to do anything. And this is actually kind of a funny story, a few poor teachers were sent to integrate the faculties of these schools. And my mother was one who was going to be sent to a white school.
Really?
Yes, my father was terrified because he was worried about the potential violence. As it turns out, my mother didn't go, but they sent this poor white woman to our school at Druid High School. And I felt so bad for her because
shut your ass up. Don't you come on this damn channel talking about pathetic clown. You got plenty of pathetic clowns in this goddamn Republican Party. Plenty. Don't bring your ass on no black person channel talking about the only black woman on the damn panel. Get your ass out of here.
Everybody just treated her really, really badly. You know, she was the only one. So this was going pretty imperfectly. And I think one reason that I told this story to George, and I think one reason it was important to get people together and then get a plan for how to do this, which is what the Philadelphia plan really was because it was going nowhere, and to the degree that it was going anywhere, it wasn't going in a very good direction. And so George and I would kind of laugh about my own personal experience in what was going on in the South before the Philadelphia plan.
You know, it's worth mentioning that affirmative action has gotten a bad name of late, and California voters have reached.
These are all Republicans. I don't know what y'all talking about. These are Republicans.
Rejected it twice, and perhaps it went overboard a bit. But back then, in the Philadelphia building trades, there was a quota of 0 African Americans. And so economists hate quotas. And a quota of zero is a bad quota, just like a quota of a large amount. Okay, so I think it reflects back on his thinking as an economist. And as Jay said, there was obviously a moral as well as an economic justification.
Well, I think he felt the moral side very strongly because both in the Philadelphia Plan and in the work with the school system, because again, it went back to George's view that America was the hope of the world. America was the place that had gotten mostly right, but there were times when America had not gotten it right. And on this, we had not.
Back to economics in the Nixon administration. And here I'm going to ask the three of you just to give me a seminar. We've got the closing of the gold window, and we've got wage and price controls. So I'll set up with what I know, which is very little. In 1970, Mr. Schultz becomes director of OMB. He's one of a circle of advisors, including Secretary of Treasury John Connally and Undersecretary of the Treasury Paul Volcker, who advised President Nixon to end the convertibility of the dollar into gold. President Nixon closes the gold window on August 15th, 1971. I'm going to quote Milton Friedman, his observation on this, quote, "The closing of the gold window opened the way to a free market for the dollar where there was none before," close quote. Again, we're dealing with something here so foreign to the way we do business and think about the currencies today that it requires a little bit of effort simply to take us back to the moment when the dollar was pegged to gold and what the debate concerned, why it was important. Who would like to take on? Mike,
I guess I'll start. So if we go back to the end of World War II and what George and Condi like to call the Global Economic and Security Commons was established, the International Monetary Fund, the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, and the World Bank were established. And we established the dollar as the centerpiece of the exchange rate system. Most countries would have fixed exchange rates, and the US would peg the dollar, exchange dollars for $35 per ounce of gold. And it pledged to do that for the foreign reserves, dollar reserves of foreign countries. So this again was George in the international arena as well, because it affected other countries. Now,
that enabled us to backstop economic growth across much of the world. Is that the idea?
It's a little more complicated than that. And I don't want to bore people in the audience with this. But what it meant was you could not have other countries and could not have an independent monetary policy along with the fixed exchange rates and free capital flows. Because if their interest rates were lower than ours, capital would flow out. They'd be pressured to devalue their currencies, and the opposite if their interest rates were higher than ours. So it created quite a conundrum. And we've seen that in more recent years when countries that had pegged their currency, the dollar, ended that, and we've seen what happens. It was a little chaotic. So this, I think, was a major move. There had been a big intellectual debate for decades in economics about whether fixed or flexible exchange rates were better. And I think the flexible market-oriented approach wound up winning, I think, to the world's advantage. So that was part one. Part two was because of this sudden change and the dollar, we weren't going to exchange $35 for an ounce of gold anymore. Foreign holders of US dollar reserves were going to be in a pickle. And so we couldn't revalue the dollar, they had to revalue against us. And so what happened was President Nixon imposed a 10% import charge that was going to be removed if and when they revalued their currencies appropriately, which is what happened. And within 18 months, the world kind of came to a bit of a equilibrium and things were going okay. And then a year later, we had the oil shock Jay referred to earlier.
And so I can't resist asking the chairman of the Fed if it worked. If we hadn't had the oil shock, it was a good idea.
We were going to switch to a floating rate system eventually. Milton Friedman was right about this, and it was a good thing that we did.
Okay, so this brings us, Condi, would you hop in on the gold window?
Which person here is not like the others? I'll leave that to the economist.
All right, then the wage and price controls, again, I'll set it up. President Nixon imposes wage and price controls. director, as he was then, director of the Office of Management and Budget, George Shultz opposes the measure, but finds himself overruled by John Connally, as Secretary of the Treasury, and Richard Nixon. In 1972, George Shultz himself becomes Secretary of the Treasury, and by January 1973, he had abolished most of the mandatory controls. He abolished the controls entirely in April 1974, just before stepping down as Secretary of the Treasury in May. So again, it is inconceivable. The notion that a president of the United States would impose wage and price controls strikes me as inconceivable now. So we need this sort of reconstruction of what were they thinking. And then also, is it fair to see this this episode as a kind of the old statist view represented by John Connally versus the new Chicago school thinking in terms of free markets represented by George Shultz? Is it as simple and straightforward as that? Mike, do you want to take a shot at this?
For many, many decades, economists have debated, and we thought we had won this battle, but it's come back several times since, the propriety of using what's called incomes policies, which were basically the government jawboning business and labor, which may have made sense in an economy where a large fraction of the labor force was unionized. Unions were very powerful. If it made sense at all, that's when it made sense. But in any event, we wound up in the situation where we had just a remarkable series of key intellectuals coming to the conclusion that we weren't really sure what we could do about inflation and unemployment occurring at the same time. We had to do something. We didn't want to inflict any pain about disinflating the economy and causing a recession. We couldn't use monetary and fiscal policy very well. And this became a big debate. And we thought it had ended successfully with the end of wage and price controls, but it came back. In fact, when I was advising candidate Reagan in 1980, the campaign asked me to debate Walter Heller, who'd been President Kennedy's chair of the Council of Economic Advisors and a key architect of the Kennedy tax cuts, on this precise point. And you had, like the head of the AFL-CIO, key industrial business leaders, like the head of DuPont, Lane Kirkland and Ernest Shapiro, deciding they would decide what to do with the government in the room, kind of getting back to the point Jay made earlier. And fortunately, that didn't happen. We had a successful, if painful, disinflation. But I'll turn it back to Jay, because I know he has some views on this as well.
Yes, Jay.
So, I mean, the interesting thing to me is that, as Michael pointed out, there was almost a consensus that we needed income policy. And in other words, that the government needed to jawbone companies informally, at least, let alone, and then maybe would eventually need to do wage and price control. So if you go back to 1966, George Shultz had held a famous conference with another University of Chicago person, and it was on guidelines. And the big names of the era debated. Milton Friedman famously debated Bob Solow over this, but people really thought that there was a problem to solve. There was a general agreement that the problem of high inflation and high unemployment, that the fiscal policy wasn't going to be able to handle that, monetary policy wasn't, so you needed the government to somehow do this. This was a bad idea. It was a really bad idea, and somehow it had become approximately conventional wisdom in these days. Milton Friedman, of course, was a big exception. George Shultz was on the right side of that. Paul Volcker was on the right side of that. But to me, there's a takeaway there, which is that, our understanding of the economy is ever evolving. The economy itself is ever evolving. So I think those of us who are doing economic policy have always got to remember that the structure of the economy is always changing, and that our understanding of it is always highly uncertain. So certain things that are sometimes accepted as conventional wisdom, people will look back in 50 years and think, like we're doing with wage price controls, they're going to say, what were they thinking at the time? Well, that's what they were thinking. They were thinking it was really the beginnings of stagflation, high unemployment and high inflation. What do we do? Very difficult problem. And Paul Volcker kind of had the answer and eventually did it. George Shultz deserves credit for supporting him, and Reagan deserves credit for supporting him as well.
Yes, Connie, of course.
Yeah, I was just going to say that this is also quintessentially George Shultz. So he lost the argument, but he understood who was elected, and he was able to bide his time. And then we had the opportunity. He worked to move things in the other direction. But George was, in that way, quintessentially a pragmatist always, also.
He played a long game.
He played a long game. And I think it isn't as well understood that when you're in government sometimes, you're going to win some and you're going to lose some. But if you never lose sight of what you think is right, you might have a chance to correct it. And I know that the wage and price controls, for George, this was really an anathema. And he thought one of the arguments that he was most unhappy that he lost because he thought it did great damage. But when he had the opportunity, he reversed it.
So,
Make
yes,
one quick comment with respect to Condi's comment about winning some losing. We always thought we were doing well if we were above Shaq's free throw percentage. But it's important to remember what was going on in the economy, as Jay has mentioned. Nixon imposed wage and price controls when inflation got up to 4%. It's important to have that historical reference in the back of your mind.
So thank you for the seminar. What I hadn't realized is the extent to which there was a debate going on within the discipline of economics when the shock hits, which means you don't have, I don't know how to put it, I don't want to use the word establishment, but you don't have consensus on how to respond when the oil shock hits. In the 70s, the economy is taking one blow after another, and the economists there's a debate about what should be done. There's a kind of uncertainty. Is that fair?
It could be fair, but let's listen to this news. Somebody does something? Some major announcement? What happens?
Congressman, thanks for your time.
I'm delighted to be with you, Brian.
So it looks like Kash Patel's luck might have run out a little bit. Can you explain the new investigation that you and your committee have just launched into him?
Well, it's the oldest story in the book. He's just looting public funds for private use. So he's been using a government jet for personal flights and lavish vacations. He's been taking his girlfriend on overnight dates on a $60 million government jet that's supposed to be used for government purposes. He's done a Scottish golfing excursion with his buddies, again on a government jet. He's taken a trip to a luxury hunting retreat called, unbelievably, Boondoggle Ranch, which I think of as the name of the whole scandal. I mean, basically, the guy who was the least qualified FBI director in history and has utterly politicized the department and turned it into a weapon against Trump's political enemies is just abusing all of the privileges of the office for personal use.
Now, in terms of the investigation itself, obviously Democrats are in the minority. And so to what extent can you investigate this without buy-in from Republicans? And I guess as a corollary to that, are there any Republicans who are joining in on this effort to investigate Kash Patel?
Well, we just got back after the little Thanksgiving recess, Brian, and so I've not had an opportunity yet to talk to the Republicans. But when we hit the floor this evening, I will definitely be approaching colleagues on the Judiciary Committee, people from the Oversight Committee, to see whether they would join us, because it's just a scandalous situation. And I think we need to raise the stakes for this kind of misconduct. Trump obviously sets a dreadful example for his administration by treating public property like private property and just bulldozing the White House and then deciding to, build out his big ballroom and taking a $400 million jet airplane from the Qataris and so on. So the rest of the administration gets the message. It's just like Mardi Gras, let's say like bon ton roulette, whatever, you can get away with it. And even though the Supreme Court, which is under Trump's spell, has given him certain kinds of immunities, those immunities don't extend to everybody else in the government. And we have to try to uphold the rule of law at every turn.
Best case scenario, what do you hope that this investigation will lead to?
Well, we want him to release all of the relevant information and all of the relevant documents. We want him to stop ripping off the taxpayers, but he's already shown himself basically to be unrepentant. And so, Trump may end up getting rid of him, but that's not sufficient for us if other members of the administration continue to abuse their public offices for private gain. And again, that goes all the way up to the top. I mean, it starts with Donald Trump, but it certainly filtered down to a lot of the other members of his cabinet just as well, including Secretary Noem at Homeland Security, and a bunch of the other ones are engaged in the same kind of misconduct and exploitation of office.
I'm not sure if you've had the opportunity to read this, but there's a new report out from active duty and retired FBI agents, and it kind of shows that what you're investigating Kash Patel for is a small part of a larger whole. There was an instance where Kash Patel, it was the day after Charlie Kirk had been shot and killed, went out to Provo to begin the investigation and wouldn't leave the plane until he got an FBI jacket. And then even still, once he got an FBI jacket from a female member of the FBI, wouldn't leave the plane until he was able to borrow some patches from other FBI agents that wouldn't leave him patchless, where there were spaces on his jacket to put those patches on. And so it really goes to show that what he's using the office for is not to lead first as a law enforcement agent, but rather to get himself Instagrammable moments and to make sure that he's the center of attention. I don't know whether he wants to use this to launch himself into some, big glossy social media career in the aftermath of this. But in any case, what was your reaction to hearing a little bit about that report that came from active duty and retired FBI agents?
It's all spectacle, performance, entertainment for them. Meantime, he's been doing everything in his power to cover up Jeffrey Epstein's crimes and the crimes that took place as part of that massive international billion-dollar global sex trafficking ring and child abuse ring. So he said he wanted all the documents released when they were running, and they got in, and he's doing everything he can to sweep all of it under the rug and to call it a Democrat hoax, along with Donald Trump. Meantime, they're taking the taxpayers for a ride in every way, using the jet planes for their romantic dates, for their buddy golf weekends, for all of their boondoggle ranch outings. And they're not serving the American people. It's just a complete performance. The good news, Brian, is that Trump is sinking like a stone in the polls. And so he'll probably end up purging a bunch of these people who are basically just imitating him because their crimes are so glaring and so obvious. In the meantime, he's in league with every, corrupt mob state leader around the world, and is in the process of pardoning Juan Orlando Hernandez, the former president of Honduras, who's a convicted cocaine trafficker who was bringing cocaine into America, 400 tons of cocaine, 800,000 pounds of cocaine he was bringing in. And Trump is going to pardon him because he's another right-wing dictator who has all the right friends in the Trump circles, while they're just blowing up boats, in Latin America at the high seas, saying these people are narco traffickers without bringing any charges, without any due process at all, without any declaration of war. So it doesn't make sense either as a legitimate act of war or as a legitimate act of police.
The problem is there's nobody to stop this administration. There's nobody to stop the administration. There's nobody to hold any of them accountable. Republicans won't hold them accountable. The Republicans are complicit because they're in charge. As long as they're in charge, it's all going to be covered up. As long as they're in charge, which is why we have to vote them out. As many as we can, vote them out, because they only want power. Why someone is not pushing back on this drug dealer that's being pardoned, it's just like every day. This is not normal. See, this is what people don't get. This is not normal. Okay. This is not normal. Complicit as in if you know your president, you're a Republican, and you know your president is doing illegal things, and you don't push back on it, that means you're complicit. That means you're saying it's okay. And it's not okay. It is not okay to to sell pardons for one thing, and to forgive and pardon people who did illegal things. Okay. None of that is okay to be complicit with. And this is our problem. You cannot have a government in which we co-sign illegal behavior. Okay. And the Republicans right now are co-signing this illegal behavior. Yeah, I know what a pardon is, and I know a pardon is not supposed to be sold. I do know that.
Enforcement. So it's just an utterly lawless, careening sequence of events that we're witnessing.
On that point, really quick, there was concern over the weekend that Pete Hegseth was the one who ordered that second strike. And of course, the second strike would be the one that would be constituted as a war crime because, you know, within the manual that our own military adheres to, it gives the example of if someone is shipwrecked for some reason, that's a legitimate justification to not attack them or to not kill them. And that's exactly what happened. It seemed this afternoon that blame had been diffused off of Pete Hegseth and onto somebody below him. And so what was your reaction to seeing what very much looks like an effort to protect Pete Hegseth?
Right. Well, even if the original attack...
Well, it's going to come down to Pete Hegseth and this officer. Did the officer act on his own? No, he did not. Everybody knows you listen to your commanding officer and you follow your commanding officer's orders. So Pete Hegseth can't say anybody did this unless they say it's Trump. And Pete Hegseth is not going to say it's Trump. So it's going to fall on the desk of Pete Hegseth. And then it's going to be him who hangs out to dry, because the order after they found the boat, after they found the men clinging to the side of the boat, and they were not enemy combatants anymore, they still had an order to kill. So what you decided to do was take out enemy combatants, but they weren't that. They were just, I guess, prisoners of war, and that's against the law. So, and that's considered murder. So it will be someone who's going to pay the price. It's going to be Hegseth, though.
Attacks on these so-called drug boats were legitimate acts of war, which I think clearly they were not. But even assuming they were, the so-called second tap, attacking the people who now were hanging on for dear life to the wreckage of the boat, was a war crime. It is a war crime to attack people who are survivors, who are defenseless, and have no military recourse. It's just like killing prisoners of war. It's killing people who no longer are a threat. So even if you assume, I think against all the evidence, that the original tap was a lawful effort just to destroy a drug boat that we were at war with, even though Congress hasn't declared any war and there are no...
We hear what you say, Adam, but you're not a legal scholar and you're not in Congress who decides these things. So I think I'll take Jamie Raskin's point of view before I take yours. I think it's illegal too. So it is what it is. He can be as much of a weasel as you like. Your president is a weasel. Your president is worse than a weasel. Your president is actually trash. But we still got to take Jamie Raskin's thought for this.
Military hostilities. The attack on the desperate survivors who are trying to hang on to the flotsam and jetsam and wreckage of the boat is clearly a war crime. It's either a war crime if you're using a military paradigm, or it's murder if you're thinking of it as law enforcement.
Yeah.
Because these people, again, were constituting no threat to anyone.
Do you think that this administration had covered up for Hegseth so that they could preserve him while still throwing somebody below him under the bus?
Well, we're waiting to see. We're trying to find that out. I mean, scandalously, the administration has been defending these, non-international law hostilities.
Kevin, you're so delusional. You're moving into you're moving into zombie status. No, you are in zombie status.
I mean, they're coming up with the most tortured neologistic syntaxes.
Right. It's just
try to
murder. It's
defend
just
what-
murder at the high seas. That's basically what it is.
Yeah, I mean,
So, I need somebody to put in the chat. I need you to put into the chat what law says if you're a drug dealer, you deserve to be murdered. That's what I want to know. If you're a drug dealer, what law says if you're a drug dealer, you deserve to be murdered? Somebody put that in the chat for me, because I'd love to know what law.
I mean, it's not an act of war. Congress hasn't declared war. We're not in active military.
Shut your ass up, Patrick, because you're defending a pedophile. Shut your ass up. Soon as you stop defending the pedo, we'll stop defending the drug cartel.
Hostilities. They say, we think that's a drug boat. We don't know who's on it, but we think everybody who's on it is guilty. And we're just going to blow up the drug boat. And then when 2 people survive the wreckage, kill all of them.
Yes, that's a war crime. But we got goofy goofies in here who are experts, military lawyers, and they know better than experts.
Is putatively, allegedly, one of the orders that came down. So we've got to get to the bottom of this.
No, we're talking about your president, Kevin. Talking about your president.
Because, of course, the logic of these attacks is unlimited. In other words, if this is allowed at the high seas, why is it not just allowed on the highways of America?
Right.
Yeah, why not? I still want some of the goofy goofies in the chat to explain it. Why wouldn't it be allowed on the regular street? If it's allowed in the sea, right there, hey, enemy come back, we can just break folks off. Why wouldn't it be allowed on the street? Just like that.
Right.
And if they can go without a declaration of war from Congress, without any military provocation, and without any proof that these are drug dealers.
No. Goofy goofies in the chat trying to say these are drug dealers. But goofy goofies ain't got no proof. Because the president, they goofy, radical right-wing president, hasn't given you any proof. So that's why everybody keeps saying they don't have any proof. Because they haven't given proof. And a testament to that is the Republicans who started the investigation in the House. Because they don't have any proof. And that's what the congressmen have said. You have not presented us with proof. So therefore, you're not supposed to be killing anyone. But you can't explain that to goofy goofies because they know better.
Why can't they just blow up trucks that are driving down a highway?
Yep.
Right. And so you can see how there's an infinitely elastic logic to what they're doing. And when it merges with...
There's no proof that they are drug dealers. There's no proof that they are not drug dealers. There's no proof whatsoever. You have to have proof, Black America. You have to have proof one way or the other. They don't have proof one way or the other. That's why they both houses opened up investigations. Both houses opened up investigations because they have no proof from this president. There is no proof. So therefore, you can't go around killing an innocent civilian. They're considered innocent civilians until you prove that they're drug dealers. And just because you say it, just because you see a boat, just because the president say it, And I understand that you goofy goofies who are MAGAs, I know that the president just got to say something 5 times. No place like home. No place like home. Goofy goofies believe everything I say. Goofy goofies believe everything I say. Just because the president says it 5 times doesn't mean it's proof. You have to have proof. They haven't given Congress proof. Goofy goofies.
The deployment of military against Los Angeles and Portland and Chicago and DC, it's a very dangerous situation.
Yeah, I completely agree. And we'll finish off with this. You had mentioned before the extent to which Kash Patel and, of course, by association, Donald Trump are involved in this cover-up of the Epstein files. You have pushed forward a...
Yes, they blew up the boat, Patrick. They blew the boat up, saw the people clinging to the side of the boat, innocent people that we don't know are drug dealers because they haven't presented evidence, and Hexas say, kill them all. And so they bombed the boat again.
a measure or introduced a measure
That's against the law.
that's intended to put a bunch of Republicans on record here as it.
You don't know what was on that boat. You don't know what's on that boat. That's the point. The point is they haven't presented evidence to Congress that it was drugs on the boat. They haven't presented evidence. And it's not about drug dealers. I wish we'd get off this drug dealer shit. It's not about drug dealers. It's about the oil that they're trying to make an excuse. They're trying to make a case, an excuse in order to go into Venezuela. Why do we have to keep going around this shit over and over again? Just goofy logic. There is no drugs on the boat. They're making an excuse so they can go into Venezuela. It ain't about no drugs. They don't care whether they got drugs. It could be 1,000 million drugs on there. They don't care about the drugs. They care about the oil. Stop talking about the drugs. Stop defending the drugs. It's not about drugs. Goofy.
Relates to the prospective pardon of Epstein's accomplice, Ghislaine Maxwell. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah. Well, look, Donald Trump pardoned 1,600 convicted January 6thers, which included hundreds of people who violently assaulted police officers. He did it on the first day of his administration, so the new Congress had no opportunity to say anything. They are clearly involved in very elaborate relationship and seduction of Ghislaine Maxwell. All she has to do is utter the right words, and then she gets transferred out of a higher security, tougher prison to a prison camp in Texas with a very gentle environment. And even there, she gets treated to some extraordinary perks and differential treatment. She gets room service in her cell. She gets to work out and have exercise privileges when she wants to. She can have visitors come in who get to use computers, unlike all the other visitors. And she appears to be involved in a commutation application. So she's setting up her pardon, commutation, clemency action from the Trump administration. We know about it. We in Congress have got to act now. And so that is the purpose of this resolution, putting Congress on record as opposing any clemency for the convicted child sex trafficker and offender, Ghislaine Maxwell, who was sentenced in Judge Allie Nathan's courtroom to 20 years in prison for recruiting and grooming and prostituting children across state lines, participating in the trafficking and the abuse of the children. If anybody is unqualified for a pardon, it's got to be Ghislaine Maxwell, who refused to testify at her trial, refused to own up to her crimes, has been completely unrepentant. Abused, continues to denigrate the victims and disparage the victims of her crimes and Jeffrey Epstein's crimes, and she continues to deny that Epstein engaged in any sexual offenses. against children. Why should she be pardoned? So that strikes me as an elementary moral and legal proposition, and we should all put our names to it. And if you voted to release all the Epstein files, certainly you should be voting also to say there should be no pardon for Ghislaine Maxwell.
In terms of getting this resolution on the floor, which is obviously important, getting these members of Congress on record in terms of where they stand on this issue, do you have to rely on Mike Johnson to bring it to the floor? Is there some other avenue that can force this resolution to be voted on?
Well, remember, this is what we did with the discharge petition. I would hope that we would immediately get all the Democrats on it,
Yeah.
and we would get at least all of the Republicans who co-sponsored the discharge petition, but really all of them who want to take a stand against this, because the rumors are that Donald Trump could decide to issue a Christmas pardon for Ghislaine Maxwell. This would be some act of charity that would obviously cement her determination to testify that she saw no wrong from Jeffrey Epstein and no wrong from Donald Trump and anybody else that the Trump administration is trying to protect. Remember, Trump had dispatched the number 2 at the Department of Justice, the Deputy Attorney General, Todd Blanche, to go and meet with her the day after she was subpoenaed to come testify.
That's the problem, Jeffrey Armstrong. He was a crappy president when he was a president before. We knew he was going to be a crappy president this time because he said he was going to do these things, and that makes him a crappy president. Why do you think most of us couldn't stand him? We knew this was coming. We knew this was coming. And we tried to warn the goofies, but they didn't want to listen. So now we have all this regret, and now we swinging from pillar to post every day, doing something in the news every day for some bullshit. This president is in the news every day for some No, it ain't my opinion. It's about 75% of us believe that. 75% of us. You've alienated all the Latinos. You've alienated all of the Cubans. You've alienated all the Somalians. You alienated all the blacks. You alienated half the whites and most of the women. Who do you think is still waiting over there? Your MAGA 25%. That's it. Why do you think you're going to have a bloodbath from here on out? Why do you think you're bleeding Republicans? Just wild. That zombie factor is crazy on you MAGAs.
Before Congress, and
wild. That zombie shit is wild on y'all. Y'all live in zombie land.
the Oversight Committee. And he went there not to get names from her about who the abusers and perpetrators were, not to figure out the full scope and dimension of this massive child sex trafficking conspiracy, but rather to make sure that she would not say anything untoward about Donald Trump.
It's pretty amazing that Republicans have been claiming.
No, don't come over and say bullshit, Don Trump. His approval rating is 35% overall, not overall. Don't even say that. 35%. You're trying to spin it. 35% means he's in catastrophic territory, and so are the Republicans. Wild. That zombie shit. That's wild.
To be battling this war on Christmas for the last 20 years. And finally, they win. They've got full control of government, House, Senate, White House. It's their moment to really bathe in the sacrosanctity of the holiday season. And what might Trump be considering doing? Releasing a pedophile's accomplice from prison. Really,
that will definitely put him in the crazy territory. Yes, that's what I call them, MAGA zombies. Because they all believe the same garbage. They all believe it. What would make you think that you would have any Hispanic person, except a few, that would deal with your Republican Party ever again? What would make you think that?
Really puts everything on full display there. With that said, Congressman, appreciate all the work that you're doing here. And
like, are you high?
This isn't just about oil. And if you think it is, you're not reading the board right. Trump's Venezuela move and his pardon of Hernandez are part of the same strategy. Both moves create instability on purpose. When Trump pardoned Hernandez, a former Honduran president convicted of working with drug traffickers, it destabilized Honduras overnight. And when Trump sent U.S. attack boats toward Venezuela with zero evidence, that destabilized the Caribbean. These aren't random
Zero
decisions.
evidence.
Instability gives Trump something he wants: more room to expand executive power without Congress stopping him. Instability pushes more migrants north, which makes his donors money. When Honduras becomes unstable, more people flee. When Venezuela becomes unstable, more people flee. And when more people flee, private detention companies like CoreCivic, Geo Group, MTC, LaSalle, all major Trump donors, make millions off of full detention beds, overflow payments, surveillance contracts, emergency funding. They profit from chaos, not stability. Both moves create foreign leaders who owe Trump personally. Hernandez now owes Trump his freedom, and Venezuela elites know Trump controls sanctions, pressure, and recognition. This isn't diplomacy. It's building personal loyalty networks, the same thing authoritarian leaders do around the world. Both moves weaken Congress and the courts and strengthen Trump. A presidential pardon erases a federal conviction. A military escalation bypasses Congress completely. Both actions send the same message. Only the president decides, not the system. That's how consolidation power works in phase 2. Both moves help Trump build his strongman circle. Look at who Trump openly admires: Putin, Orban, Erdogan, MBS, Bolsonaro. Strong men support each other because they rule the same way, through force, fear, and deals behind closed doors. Hernandez fits that mold. Venezuela fits that script. Both moves give Trump a crisis he can use at home. If Trump can point to a foreign threat, he gets to say, "See, only I can protect you." Strong leaders need crises. If one doesn't exist, they make one. This isn't about oil. This isn't about border security. This isn't about drugs. It's about building power inside the U.S. and across Central America. Hernandez's pardon and the Venezuela escalation are two pieces of the same plan: destabilize the region, increase migration, enrich donors, weaken democratic checks, build foreign loyalty, expand military power, centralize control in the executive. This is the global heist happening in plain sight. Everyone's thinking it. I'm just saying it.
Always put that music on there and then burn my ass up for the damn music. They're always doing that. I hate when they do that. Listen, check this out. Why is the House Speaker in Tennessee? Why is the House Speaker in this special election in Tennessee trying to get the damn vote out? He in this special election, he in Tennessee trying to get the vote out because they can see, they can smell that Democratic, they can smell that girl That girl, Trump won that state with 22 points. Why would they need to come there and canvass or whatever they doing? Why would they need to do that if he won it by 22 points? Because it don't make no sense, because the girl has caught up with their ass. She is caught up with him. And the House Speaker is in Tennessee doing a canvassing the neighborhood, saying, come on, vote. We can't lose. If this woman gets within 4 points of losing, it's over for you maggots. It's over for you. It's over for you zombies. It's over. People are tired of this zombie shit.
Is for all the marbles that will decide the future of the country. No hyperbole there at all.
Well, the stage is set. Tomorrow is a specially called election day for a portion of Middle Tennessee in the 7th Congressional District. Republican Matt Van Epps, Democrat Afton Bain, and a few independent candidates are vying to replace Mark Green in Congress. Our Chris Davis shows us how the candidates spent their final day on the campaign trail and what we could expect tomorrow night.
To fight for America. After months of constant political ads
to shake up Washington
and yard signs everywhere you look,
I think it's too close to call that race.
all eyes are on Middle Tennessee, the center of the political universe Tuesday for the 7th Congressional Special Election.
Choice could not be more clear in terms of who is going to make life more affordable.
The leading candidates kept an aggressive schedule on the last day of the campaign.
We're fighting for working families.
And you know what? They out there talking about she's radical. She likes men in bathrooms. She hates Christianity. The same garbage that we're tired of hearing from you zombie people. They're out there saying all of that radical right-wing crap. She's out there talking about food prices, bread, gas. They're out there talking about how radical she is. Man, this is the Republicans' race to lose, but you go out there calling her radical, you go out there calling her unchristian, you're gonna lose. Because that's what they out there doing. Radical. She's the radical left. She's a radical, knowing full well she ain't no radical. Knowing full well she's a normal, everyday, average, blonde, blue-eyed girl who's just beating the Republicans at their own game. Why would all of y'all need to show up at a rally? Why would Mike, the House Speaker, be in Tennessee trying to win a race for her? Because they're scared she might win. She might pull us out. You guys are doing that zombie shit again. She's not a Christian. She doesn't love Jesus. She's a left-wing radical. Nobody believes that anymore, guys. Nobody believes that anymore.
For farmers, for military and veterans, to make it easier and better for them.
Matt Van Epps bringing in big names like House Speaker Mike Johnson and President Donald Trump, who called in Monday morning.
Donald Trump. Wow. They even had Donald Trump show up to help that girl, to help that dude in Tennessee. Donald Trump won that state. That's a deep red Republican state. Why are y'all going hard? Why are you all going hard for this young girl in Tennessee? Tennessee 7. All of the big wigs are showing up for him. They shouldn't have to show up for him. They shouldn't. Donald Trump does robocalls for this guy. Mike Johnson, the House Speaker, is doing a town hall for this guy. All tonight. Why would they need to do all of that tonight if Donald Trump won it by 22 points? Because they're afraid they're going to lose. And if they go out there talking about she's a left-wing radical, Antifa, and all that garbage we hear from the zombies, you're going to lose. Because nobody wants to hear that. There you go, STJ Holmes. There you go, trying to denigrate the girl instead of beating her own policy. You want to come out there talking about crap.
And let's make it a sweeping victory.
And Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and former Vice President Al Gore to stump for Afton Baines.
It's one that's historically been very reliably a red area.
Mark Schwartz, a political science professor at Lipscomb, says normally this race would be an easy win for a Republican because of how the district is drawn. But a special election changes everything.
This is one that I think took Republicans a little bit by surprise.
This race, it's all about turnout.
Our Ben Hall, host of Inside Politics, crunched the numbers.
In that last election, when President Trump was on the ballot, 120,000 Democrats voted for Megan Barry. Expected about 100,000 turnout. If she can get half of that, she could win.
And the same goes for Van Epps.
And we're going to get half of that. And we're going to get half of that. Because we're tired of this right-wing radical president and his agenda. About the right-wing radical agenda. People are tired of the agenda.
If Republicans turn out in droves.
The question is, who turns out?
Which is why this race may have felt different compared.
Why am I caring about what men think? Men are grown men. I don't care what men think. Men do them.
Compared to other.
You vote. You're supposed to vote your pocketbook, but a lot of you zombies just vote for rich people.
Recent elections. In a lot of congressional districts, you might see Republicans and Democrats trying to fight over the independent moderate voters. But that's not what's happening in this special election.
For the most part, our race will be mobilization, and not just mobilization of Democrats, but mobilization of independents.
Both are trying to appeal to their core base.
I fully support the president, fully behind the president.
And whichever campaign does a better job of that will punch their ticket to Washington, D.C. With photojournalist Nathan Sharkey.
Oh, I hope she wins. Oh, I'm just going to come back here. I'm just within, even if she loses within 5 points, I'm still going to come here and clown because I know the Democrats are going to crush it. They're going to crush it. I just know.
Chris Davis, News Channel 5.
That's wild to me that girl done caught up. That girl has caught up to she has caught up to the Republican. Lord have mercy.
Living in the state of Tennessee that also can read, because public libraries across the state of Tennessee, with the exception of Knoxville and Memphis, are shut down now. And they're shut down for obviously a very good reason. It's not because they found asbestos in the walls or because there's a mold infestation. No, they're shut down because they have been ordered by Trey Hargett, the Republican Secretary of State for the state of Tennessee, to go through and review all of their books and ban all of them that have any LGBTQ characters, messages, or themes. Because it's not because they hate the LGBTQ community. No. It's because the state banned diversity, equity, and inclusion. And, any book that has a transgender character or a gay character is obviously forcing that onto children. It's basically an instruction manual for children on how to be gay or how to be transgender. So, we have to ban that. So says Trey Hargett in a letter that he sent to the libraries across the state early in November. Now, that's not how it works. And technically, the state does not even have the authority to do that, according, of course, to the organizations that have been fighting back against the Republican book bans across the country. But here's the thing. Those public libraries in Tennessee that, of course, are now shut down, going through this massive book review, none of the funding they receive from the state is actually used to purchase books. It's used to provide the online library that all Tennessee residents have access to. It's used to pay the salaries of the staff, to pay for the buildings. None of it pays for the books.
That's crazy.
When someone called someone in my family,
Hold on a second.
It's not different.
Hold on a second. If someone comes on this show
and says, I love you.
Are you okay with Nick Fuentes?
Here we go. I'm a Jew. Do you want to go there? And let's say this.
Yeah, I just asked the question.
And
Yes or no?
Yes, I'm
Are
okay.
you okay
If
with Nick
Nick
Fuentes?
Fuentes wants to be able to speak freely, and you've never pushed back, as she has called my husband a white nationalist.
Hold on.
That is no
Katie.
different than Nick Fuentes
Katie.
going on Tucker Carlson's
Katie.
show. It's not,
Nick-
and you should admit it.
Well, hold on. Wait, hold on. How is it anything similar? It's not remotely similar at all. Nick Fuentes
You host people on your show all the time who call my
don't-
husband and myself
but
a
hold on,
Nazi.
I
So
don't-
how is that any
I
different from
don't-
Tucker Carlson going on
Nick Fuentes,
and Nick Fuentes
Fuentes-
having
Nick
Tucker Carlson on his
Fuentes
show?
is
It's not different.
actually, he's actually,
anti-Semitic. He's anti-Semitic. They need to excise him.
That's absolutely
Nick
false.
does not have the pulse of the Republican base. It's what Democrats want to say to divide the Republican base when that isn't true. But I want to go back to something really quick.
Tucker Carlson was just bowing in front of
Can
him.
I also just
Tucker
add,
Carlson
you
hosted him on
mentioned-
his show. He did not bow, nor did he kneel.
But you mentioned
to Nick Fuentes.
you don't think that's a different thing?
Do you believe my
You don't
husband's
think,
a Nazi? You allowed
but
him
do
on your
you
show
think
to say
that
it.
do you think those things are different or not?
I believe
I don't think anybody
it's
around
the same
me.
equitable
But hold on.
comparison
So, listen,
for Nick Fuentes
I just
to go
think-
to Tucker
I
Carlson's
just think
show
that
and
you
you
are
to have
making-
people
you
to
are
have
making-
Let's go
all
back
sorts of
to
things.
let's go back to the murder of Charlie Kirk. Let's go back to the murder of Charlie Kirk, should we?
Hello, everybody. Guys, I couldn't believe my eyes. We got Fascist Powder's wife, Katie Miller, on the set, and the one and only most loyal Trump baby mama, Scott Jennings. Let's get into the segment and we'll talk about it.
One of the most fascinating storylines of Donald Trump's second term are these questions about whether his hold on MAGA is loosening. Some of the president's staunchest supporters have taken issue with his foreign deals, his military strikes, his ballrooms, the economy, and of course, the Epstein files. And now there is a clear battle for whatever MAGA looks like after Trump, and there will be an after Trump. Marjorie Taylor Greene abruptly resigning after the president called her a traitor. And there are warnings that even more Republicans will follow over the way the White House has been treating them lately. It's also prevalent in MAGA media, most recently over Tucker Carlson's interview with Holocaust denier Nick Fuentes, which Trump later defended. And Carlson doesn't mince words about the party itself.
And the Republican Party, which is almost to the point where it's just useless, and I'm going to have to oppose it because I hate them too much, but because they're such betrayers.
Now that interview with Nick Fuentes is not just about Nick Fuentes, it's also about Tucker Carlson. And maybe Tucker is trying to create more of a wedge in MAGA, but it's clear that people are looking for the next messenger for Trump after Trump. Who do you think it's going to be?
I think President Trump has made it very clear he'd like to see J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio. There are many people who can speak eloquently to what the MAGA base is about, which is
Hell no. Not Marco Rubio and damn sure not JD. I like to wear makeup and I think I'm half gay. JD Vance. Hell no. And Marco Rubio, hell no.
growing our economy, stopping illegal immigration.
They can't stand Marco Rubio. Republicans, real Republicans can't stand Marco Rubio.
And putting Americans first, which is what Make America Great Again means, is Americans first and Americans doing what we can do to grow and live in the best country in the world. But I want to go back to Marjorie Taylor Greene for a second. Just because she left the party isn't indicative of some larger MAGA revolt and President Trump's grasp on the MAGA movement. She is someone who blew up his phone multiple times a day, acting like she was the center of the universe and main character syndrome, when in reality, President Trump's job is not member maintenance and dealing with a specific member of Congress. He is the leader of the free world who has a lot more on his plate than returning Marjorie Taylor Greene's calls back every 5 minutes.
But it's not just her, right? I mean, there are also other Republicans. Here's a quote in Punch Bowl. A senior House Republican says the entire White House team has treated all members like garbage, all. The arrogance of this White House team is off-putting to members who are run roughshod and threatened. And some of them are anticipating that this is going to be a tough midterm.
I think that dude is psycho. I think that fucking Stephen Miller is psycho just on GP.
Some of them are going to call it quits for all kinds of different reasons. It's coming up when it comes to healthcare. They don't want to vote on the plan that's coming out of the White House. There's a lot going on here. That's not just Marjorie Taylor Greene.
And part of it is the disconnect between having heard President Trump, for example, and the Biden administration calling for the release of the Epstein files, which, yes, Biden could have released them too. But then now that he's in the position to do that, we're not seeing any of that happen. It's this, right, but they're not being released. So the challenge that I see is that when someone
see if
like
it is
Marjorie Taylor,
released. They have 30 days.
yeah, well, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who was so
Guys, look how angry he gets. I told you guys, he really loves Trump. He has this weird obsession with the guy. Like, it's just so odd to me. You can see it in his face. Look at him, how angered he is. Calm down, man. He'll still let you sit on his lap and play with his hair. Calm down. And everyone knows Trump isn't going to release the Epstein files. And he'll delay. We all know that.
Right.
Unbelievable. Look at him. Look how emotional he is.
leaning in hard on the MAGA movement. Everything from Epstein files to the disconnect between working class and elites and every conspiracy theory you could possibly find. And she was leaning in hard. To lose her is a suggestion that you're losing many other people who were part of that movement. When you have people who work in the FBI.
No, we're not. We just think he's a shitty president, lucky you. We just know he's a shitty president. That's all.
Threatening to resign because they feel that this core MAGA issue
Absolutely.
was mishandled. That's a challenge in your coalition. Now, what we don't hear is President Trump saying, like Tucker Carlson, saying that he wants to either take over the entire Republican Party, reshape it in his image. So what is the message from this president that...
No, I think he's your daddy, zombie. You're over here caping for the pedo. I think he's your daddy.
now brings this coalition back together now that it's fracturing.
So can we just go to the data? CNN.
And to JD Vance, he won't. Trump on interview with someone on Fox, I forget, said that JD Vance is not his successor. Like, that's just amazing. And he won't work.
Well, no, he not. The JD Vance is not Trump's successor. Nobody ain't nobody voting for no gay boy. As many as you maggots get in this chat talking about gay stuff, talking about trans and gay stuff, you gonna vote for JD Vance? Stop it. The first thing y'all talk about is gay boy. That's the first thing you run your mouth about. Jesus.
JD Vance won't work as presidential nomination. Guys, this is disgusting, but it's because he has an Indian wife. And conservatives hate her because of it.
So
I don't even want to say the word that they've been calling her, or they call Indian people in general. These people are disgusting.
Yeah,
that's why there's conspiracies right now that JD Vance will leave his wife for Erica Kirk, which would be Charlie Kirk's wife, which would be lovely, just lovely if he did that.
Mhm.
Republicans are divided. That's without a fact. And it's only on one issue that I can really think about. They can't all agree to be full-on Nazis and hate the Jews. Everyone else, sure, perfectly fine, even encouraged, but not the Jewish people.
His own data from our own data analyst Harriet. President Trump has an 87% approval rating among Republicans, which is higher than Barack Obama.
Among Republicans, the rest of us thinks he's trash. And you can't just deal with just you Republicans, because since you've lost the Latino vote, since you've lost the independents, since you've lost half the white people, you can't win an election. You just can't.
His approval rating among Democrats at this point in his term, higher than where George W. Bush was in his term. He is the strongest for his own party, strongest president at this point in his second term in the modern era. That's number one. Number two, Marjorie Taylor Greene.
He's also the most unpopular president in modern history. Like, unbelievable. 87%. That's not a flex. That just means that your party's a cult. Your party's a cult. That's what it means.
That's what he meant.
I think had a falling out with the president over politics. He showed her a poll that said she couldn't win statewide in Georgia.
That's exactly
she got
what it
mad. She got mad. And by the way, she stands with a group of isolationists who just happen to disagree with the president over, say, taking away Iran's nuclear weapons and some other issues. That's fine. He's the president. She's not. And if you want to talk about whether the president has a hold on his party or whether he's a lame duck, I'll just submit that when he withdrew his endorsement of Greene, she lasted a week and then had to resign from Congress. That's not weakness. That is
a couple of things about that, Scott, because first of all,
death
I think you understand that a lot of Trump's MAGA base is not just people who are registered Republicans. A lot of them are people who are new to the system. And I think that many of those, the problem for Republicans, just like it was this past November when they lost, was that getting those people to come back out of the woodwork is part of the issue. They come out for Trump, they don't come out for anyone else. But the second thing, I do wonder if this issue of the isolationism that Marjorie Taylor Greene and maybe the Tucker Carlson espouse is part of the problem here, because Trump attracted them into the party because he kind of seemed isolationist at times. But now everybody is wondering, is that really what he is? I mean, I think some of the ideological confusion is part of the story.
It
here
is
for
very
Trump.
hard to see how you can give $40 billion to Argentina.
We didn't give them. We
To
did
Argentina
a currency
for
swap.
their
But you gave them 20.
soybean
And we made a profit
farmers.
on it. But you gave them 20.
And
We
then
made a
say
profit
that
on it. But you didn't
Europe
give them 40
is
billion.
Europe
Give
is a
us a lot.
problem and they're not doing enough, and that Ukraine, you know, everything should resolve itself
I
there
don't think it's
magically.
Marjorie Taylor Greene's fault that she thought that Trump was an isolationist.
actually
I
it
think
is.
part of
It
the
is.
problem
It
is
is.
that Trump's
America first
vision for politics is whatever Trump wants.
No.
And all of those other people, there are, but Scott, there are
ahead, Scott.
isolationists in the
So I
MAGA
can jump
tent.
in.
What happens to them?
Let
Do
me
they
answer
just
her.
go
and I'll-
away?
Yeah, go ahead. I'll
Do
jump
they
in.
just go away?
Look, here's the deal. A lot of people tried to ascribe their own personal views to Trump, and they tried to, I guess, influence him into their own personal views or make their personal views stick to him. He has actually, on the issue of Iran, shown extreme moral clarity about this for decades. He has always said they cannot be allowed to have a nuclear weapon. In his first term, he fired cruise missiles into Syria. We took out Soleimani. Trump has never been an isolationist, and anybody walking around in 2025 who thinks that he is being willfully blind or just stupid. He has been for smart engagement. He's not for adventurism.
Yeah, but we done got entangled in 3, 4, 5 different wars already, and he's only been president for 1 year, for 1 year, and we've been entangled in 3, 4, 5 different wars. That's the fucking problem. Your president is a liar and he's a lame duck.
But he's been for smart engagement since he came
So
on the national scene.
Steve Bannon said,
You hear that, conservative? He just called you stupid. And guess what? You are. And guys, it's very easy to see why some are pissed with Trump. He gave $40 billion to Argentina to help boost their economy. Currency swap or not, he didn't have to do that. Whether we made a profit, we could have made a profit right here in America. Cut the crap, Scott. While screwing over the beef producing farmers in the US. Yeah. And don't even get me started with the healthcare cuts. They're pissed about that, obviously. And Trump, he said he would release the Epstein file. I think this is when the wall started to crack. The Epstein files, he called them stupid. He called them all stupid and losers for even wanting them released after he campaigned on it. He just lied and lied to them. And they're getting effing pissed. Called it a hoax, but said, oh, it's all a hoax.
I don't recall saying none of that shit. Hey, Suits, maybe you need to clean your ears out. You didn't hear me say that.
It's fake. But we're going to investigate Clinton and Summers, Larry Summers. How does that make sense? Even to conservatives who are truly some of the dumbest people alive. Some realize, well, wait a second. Wait a damn second. Am I getting played? Yeah, you are, cabrón. But then you get these Congress members too that don't want to defend the garbage.
Now I know you goofy candy man. Now I know you drinking something other than Kool-Aid.
Garbage Trump is putting out anymore. After they realize that they're gonna get shellacked, smashed, and not in a good ways in the coming midterms. That's the reason they're running away. They just don't want to deal with it. Right? Running elections are not fine. Are not fun. They're miserable. They're a lot of work. You have to constantly fundraise. And they were all fine with it for an effing decade, damn near. But now that their party's power is in jeopardy, they all want to act like they were against Trump and what he's doing. Some of them want to leave. Unbelievable. It's a joke at the expense of dumb conservative voters. And now they're delving them deeper into bigotry, trying to make these idiots become full-on Nazis. And watch how conservatives fall right into that trap. Instead of looking up, instead of looking at the wealthy. Unbelievable.
and to Axios, Trump knows his movement's base better than anyone, but a lot of his base feels that he's spending too much time on Palestine and not enough on East Palestine, Ohio.
So listen, you got a lot of people. You got a lot of people just like Nick Fuentes who's saying, "No, I can't fuck with Trump no more." It's plenty of you. It's plenty of you Republicans that say, "I can't fuck with Trump no more." There's plenty of y'all out there. I don't know why y'all seem to think your base is bigger than that. I'm giving y'all 25%. The rest of the country is saying, "Hell no."
The fact is that Donald Trump doesn't have politics. And I'm tired of people ascribing a politic to Donald Trump. He has interests. And most of those interests revolve around himself. And I think people realize that Donald Trump is very transactional. And at the end of the day, the transactions that Donald Trump makes usually benefit in some way his worldview, himself, his family, his politics. That's first and foremost. And the thing that bothers me the most is that people think, for example, that MAGA, I know you mentioned Marco Rubio and JD Vance. MAGA's like, I mean, it's Ticketmaster. It's non-transferable. If JD Vance or Marco Rubio think they're about to inherit the MAGA base, there's nothing about JD Vance. And let me put a bow on this. One more thing, because what they don't realize is that even a part of this MAGA base, the fact that we're even mentioning Nick Fuentes, he's 4'11", he's misogynistic, and he's anti-Semitic, but yet he is somebody who has the pulse of the Republican base right now. They need to excise him.
That's absolutely
Nick
false.
does not have the pulse of the Republican base. It's what Democrats want to say to divide the Republican base when that isn't true. But I want to go back to something really quick.
Tucker Carlson was just bowing in front of him.
Tucker Carlson hosted him on his show. He did not bow, nor did he kneel.
But you mentioned
to Nick Fuentes.
you mentioned JD Vance, and he also
Tucker Carlson is like the biggest right-wing pundit. For him to have him on his show, Nick Fuentes on the show. Oh, Nick Fuentes is a nobody. He doesn't have the pulse of the.
Thank you. He had him on his show. For him to have Nick Fuentes on his show, that means that boy has power. So y'all can denigrate him all you want and try to put him back in the back pocket. No, he ain't going nowhere, and he's leading a lot of dudes over there away from Trump. So my whole thing is, you got the MAGA. They're losing a lot of power, this MAGA group.
Party. These people are effing idiots. They're not idiots. They're in denial. Not even in denial. They're lying. They're trying to will it out of existence.
did not denounce Tucker for hosting
Correct.
Nick Fuentes.
I mean, what are we talking
so
about?
what does it say that Vance didn't feel like part of what if he wants to lead the Republican Party, part of what
Nick Fuentes told JD Vance, if you disavow me, you say anything about me, you say anything against me, I will have my groper dudes show up in Iowa. I will have my groper dudes show up in every fucking state that you are and burn your shit to the ground. And you ain't heard what's the name? You ain't heard JD Vance say a damn thing against Nick Fuentes. Because Nick Fuentes said, you say something against me and I'll burn your shit to the ground. Y'all can go over to Nick Fuentes' channel, and he said straight up, you disavow me and I will show up everywhere. We don't have no jobs. We gonna tear your shit apart. You will never become president if you go against me. And I bet you that damn JD Vance ain't said jack shit against Nick Fuentes, ain't heard a peep out of his ass.
he has to do is to police the boundaries of what's acceptable and what's not, and not say, hey, Tucker.
Nick Fuentes said, if JD Vance say anything against me, if he disavows me, if he says anything against me, I will burn his campaign to be president to the ground. He won't ever be president if he burns me.
Unacceptable. Don't do that.
It's not up to you or myself to police speech in our country.
I mean, shouldn't it be up to JD Vance to say this is not part of our movement?
Are you okay? Are you okay with Nick Fuentes?
Here we go. I'm a Jew. Do you want to go there? And let's say this.
Yeah, I just asked the question. Was yes or no?
Yes, I'm okay. If Nick Fuentes wants to be able to speak freely in our country, he has every right to do so. Do I agree with his views? Do I think
That's
that
not the
they
question.
should become mainstream in our country? Absolutely not.
But hold on.
I really want to go back to this for 1 second.
But this isn't about whether he can speak freely. It's about whether someone like Tucker Carlson, who is a very powerful force in the conservative movement.
You host people on your show all the time who call my husband and myself a Nazi. So how is that any different from Tucker Carlson going on Nick Fuentes having Tucker Carlson on his show? It's not different.
He's actually
he's anti-Semitic.
a Hitler admirer. Nick Fuentes is actually a Hitler
admirer. But he literally is not a good
That is a different thing.
You have Jennifer Welch on your show very often, and you've never pushed back as she has called my husband a white nationalist.
Hold on.
That is no different than Nick Fuentes going on Tucker Carlson's show. It's not, and you should admit it.
Well, hold on. Wait, hold on. How is it anything similar? It's not remotely similar at all. Nick Fuentes sits around and says that he likes Hitler. How is that
what does
similar
Katie have to do with that? What does she have to do with that? She has nothing to do with that. Literally nothing.
Scott, Katie is the person who just said to me that it is comparable to say that Nick Fuentes, who is literally a neo-Nazi, is the same as somebody, a liberal, who has an opinion who is not a neo-Nazi.
A
They
hateful
are
opinion.
not
A hateful opinion.
same.
How do you want? Excuse me.
Hold
Just
on.
let's go back to
They
this
are
point one more
not-
time.
but
Nick
Katie,
Fuentes
it
can
is
espouse an
not
opinion on
the
Tucker Carlson's
same-
show.
it is not the
and
same
he didn't push
thing.
back the same way you didn't push
Katie.
back when someone called someone in
Okay,
my family
hold
a
on a
Nazi.
second.
It's not different.
Hold on a
Abby.
second.
It's not.
If someone comes on this show and says,
She's
I
out of
love
her mind.
Hitler and I admire what he did, they would never, first of all, I would never invite them on the show and they would never be invited back. So those two things are
But yet
not
you've gone on Jennifer
the
Welch's
same
podcast. It's the same thing.
They
It's
are
the same
not
thing.
the same thing.
What I think
okay?
is so, what I find
Disagree.
so,
But Katie, but hold on, Katie.
No, we can
Do you
agree to
believe that
disagree.
Jennifer Welch has a right to say something negative about your husband?
The same way Nick
Do you-
Fuentes has
no,
the
but
right
hold
to
on.
say what he wants
So
to
you
say.
think
No
Nick, you
difference.
think that it's okay? Hold on. Do you think it is okay for Jennifer Welch? Is she allowed to say something negative about your husband?
Absolutely, and it's your job as
Okay.
a moderator
So-
then to
so
push
that's-
back.
so that's the
it's
first
the
thing.
same way you're asking Tucker
So now
Carlson
Nick
to push back against Nick
but
Fuentes.
hold on, Nick Fuentes.
Is it not different?
Nick Fuentes is espousing. He's not describing someone else as a Nazi. He is saying, I admire Nazis. You don't think that's a different thing?
Do you believe my
You don't
husband's
think-
a Nazi? You allow
But
someone
do
on your
you
show
think
to
that
say
that's a? Do you think those things are different or not?
I don't
believe
think anybody
it's the
around
same
this
equitable
table
comparison.
believes-
So listen,
for Nick Fuentes
I just
to go
think-
on Tucker
I
Carlson's
just think
show
that
and
you
you
are
to have people
making
to have on your show.
you are making a comparison of two things that are not in any way the same. I acknowledge that and listen, when
It's
people
happened more than once, Abby.
But hold
so
on.
at one point, it's a
but hold
common
on.
occurrence.
When people say their opinions, I don't endorse them, but I also am not responsible for their
So
opinions.
doesn't that apply to Tucker
That is
Carlson?
different from a person themselves describing themselves as a
Exactly.
hate monger.
Is Tucker Carlson
And so
responsible
that
for Nick Fuentes'
person-
opinions?
So, but hold on a second. I am also not a Republican Party official or a Democrat Party official.
Neither is
And so
Tucker
I'm
Carlson.
asking you about you as a Republican and who you think is the leader of your party, right?
Right
and
now,
I'm
it's President Donald
And
J.
I'm
Trump.
asking your opinion, okay? If you think that JD Vance is that person, do you think that he should be sitting at a table and nodding along with Nick Fuentes? Yes or no?
I don't believe JD Vance has ever sat and nodded along with Nick Fuentes.
Do you
and that
think
would
that,
be,
do you
that
think
would
that
be gross
Tucker
for you to say
Carlson,
he did.
do you think it is okay for JD Vance to think it's okay for Tucker Carlson to sit and nod along with
I think it's
Tucker-
okay
with
for
Nick
Tucker
Fuentes?
Carlson to have Nick Fuentes on the show the same way you have people
Okay,
on your show
well, that's
who
all
espouse similar
Well,
views.
hold on, that's all I asked you. And we can just leave it at that. Because at the end of the day, that is what the Republican Party has to decide. Do they care whether or not someone who has a loud voice in their party is bringing on somebody who is encouraging neo-Nazism?
Wait,
And if you
do the
think that that
Democrats
is
not have to
okay,
decide?
Wait,
Because
if
they
you think that's
harbor
okay,
all
then
sorts of
that's
anti-Semitism.
let's go back to the murder of Charlie
Don't the
Kirk.
Democrats have to
Let's go
decide?
back to the murder of Charlie Kirk. Should we?
So we have to leave it at that. Next.
Guys, she brought up Charlie Kirk. Forget about that. I don't even want to talk about that idiot. But to bring up Jennifer Welch from the I've Had It podcast, that woman, both of those women over there, her and Angie Pumps, constantly fighting against these white nationalists, these Nazis. She's defending the Jewish people. This lady is Jewish, and think about what she's defending. Sometimes I can't believe what I'm hearing, what I'm seeing. Stephen Miller, first off, constantly shared white nationalist talking points directly from white nationalist groups, self-identified groups. He has been spewing this kind of stuff since college. She knows this about her husband. Again, she's Jewish. Guys, she really isn't okay. She's so hysterical and loses her effing mind. And I love this version of Abby Phillip cornering these absolute fools. Her psychopathic white nationalist husband, fascist powder, they even sound the same. Erratic as all hell. Again, she's Jewish. All these people claim to care so much about the Jews, but it's clear. Her, Scott Jennings, all these other Republicans that act like they care about Jewish people, it's all about their own self-preservation. Like, think about, again, what she's doing here as a Jewish woman. She's defending the Nazis, defending Tucker Carlson to allow him to speak to Nazis. No one said he can't speak to him, you idiot. Like, she cannot and will not say what JD Vance did was wrong by supporting Tucker playing cute with Nick Fuentes. That's the issue, is that Tucker was playing cute with the mother effer. No one is saying Nick can't talk. That little weird loser can't speak. He's been speaking for years. It's about if you're going to sit and sanitize their image by playing footsies. Like, don't play. These people are playing stupid. They know what's going on. They want to have it both ways. They want to be able to say we are anti-Semitic and only anti-Semitism we're against. Racism and bigotry, like I said, that's encouraged. That's okay. While also not pushing back on these huge media pundits Tucker playing like Tucker Carlson playing a Ring Around the Rosie with Nick Fuentes. Like, you cannot have it both ways. One of these guys, Nick Fuentes, says he loves Hitler. He loves Stalin. Like, guys, he denies that 6 million people were killed, but no one knows the exact number, but he called them cookies. There's no way you could bake that amount of cookies. This is who she's essentially defending by proxy. I mean, this is why I say have fun with the lepers eating your face. Tell them I said effing hi. And guys, let me just give you my last rant here. I know I'm ranting, but the reason I'm calm in most of these conversations or even laugh about these creatures is truly because I think they're unevolved humans. They will end up eating themselves. As you can see, it's already happening with Marjorie Taylor Greene. And with this anti-Semitism, it's going to go further. Remember, everything else they agree. Anti-black, brown, perfectly fine. Their hatred of women and everyone else, that's fine. The anti-Semitism, no, papi, that's a no. They will devour themselves, as I said before. You need effing allies. You can't just shun the world and shut down the world. You will lose in whatever you're trying to achieve. That's why I constantly ask Hispanics to stand on the side of black issues and vote in such a way. Because we are seen as one in the same to these bigoted morons, papi, and mommies out there. They hate us all the same. There is no daylight in their bigotry. They hate us all the same. Hey, women out there, even the white ones, they don't like you either if you haven't noticed. They don't respect you. They think you're property. But guess who?
Hey, these are the things that we know. We already know all the things that we need to know. All the things that we need to know. So we will hopefully have a good turnout tomorrow. Anybody in Tennessee, please show up. Hit the like, share, and subscribe. We have content every day, all throughout the day. I'd appreciate it. I really would. Tomorrow we have the election with Afton Bain. If Afton Bain comes, I'll be back here around 5 o'clock tomorrow because the polls close at, I'm assuming they close around 7. We will know. Hopefully we will know by 7:30, 8 o'clock. Hopefully we will know by 8 o'clock if Ashton Bain pulled it out. Okay? This is a deep red Tennessee state. If she gets anywhere within 5 points, it's over. That movement is going to be over. Okay? So hopefully we can find out something early about that. I hate for it to be this way because the MAGA movement started because their head exploded because Obama got elected. A black dude got elected. This is how the MAGA movement started. First, it was the Tea Party. And then the Tea Party turned into the MAGA movement. We know where it started. It started with Obama. Their head exploded with Obama. We get that. We understand it fully. We understand why, when, and how. It's no big deal. But this movement needs to end because it's destructive. It's destructive for our country. It's destructive for our country and it's destructive for our party. And people are waking up to the zombie-like attitude that we have with this particular group. It was fun while it lasted, but it just got out of hand. It just got too far out of hand. We had to deal with people saying X, Y, and Z. We had racist people on that side. We had dragging people out of cars, jumping into people's housing, being just completely without empathy. You guys went nuts over Charlie Kirk. Just so much garbage that nobody wanted to handle. We just said, nope, we can't deal with that. We couldn't handle a black man. Yeah, they just couldn't handle Obama being the president. This is what made it start. Because every time you talk to anybody from that particular era when Obama got hired, when Obama got elected, the first thing they said, he always brings race into it. Every time a black person says white or black or anything, that's a white guy, that's a black guy. The first thing the maggots say, you bringing race into it. No, that's not. We don't bring race into it. The only person that brings race into it is you maggots. You bring race into it. We would prefer not to have race into it, but we can't never get away from it because the maggots always bring it up. We can't never get away from it because they always bring it up. You say anything. Well, I can say something like right now. I just said white and black, and then we'll have goofy goofies trying to report me saying I'm racist. When they look at my videos every day and they know I'm not racist and they know I'm not saying anything racist. But you got goofy saying that, right? She said white, so she's racist. She's what? She says white, so she's racist. You actually got people. You actually got people reporting it, but it is what it is. I brought it up again. Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh my God! I can't with you zombies. I cannot with you zombies, and that's what you are. Unfortunately, you don't know that's what you are, but that's what you are. That's the way we look at you. From here on out, we libertards got to look at y'all as zombies because you just open your mouth, walk forward, and have your arms out. That's all you do. You follow the sound of the music. You follow the sound of any Republican's voice, no matter whether it's wrong, right, or indifferent. You just hold your arms out, close your eyes, and open your mouth. You're zombies. It is what it is. So I will be back here. Yes, it's a cult. Absolutely. So I will be back here tomorrow. Of course, we will be back here talking about the world events, what's going on, how. Let's hope Afton wins. Come on, Afton, Tennessee 7. Come on, Afton, Tennessee 7. But it is what it is. And I appreciate you. Please like, share, subscribe. We have this content every day. We got to wake you maggots up. We got to wake y'all maggots up before it's too late. We just got to wake y'all up before it's too late. I will be here tomorrow.